New York, former president and CEO of eBay, and Republican frontrunner in the California governor's race, Meg Whitman. In a recent profile in More magazine, Meg's run for governor is described like this. Whitman is a candidate no one can ignore. Having left her job at eBay in 2008, she is now pursuing politics as a second act, committed to her new calling, but with no experience running for elected office. Her political future boils down to this. Will she persuade voters, especially women, that the talents she parlayed into $1 billion can guide California through the recession's perfect storm? It's a good question. Meg is also the author of a new book, The Power of Many, Values of Success in Business and in Life. And Meg Whitman, it's good to have you on the show this morning.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk broadly, first of all. I want to get your reaction to the president's speech. The Republican response included a comment that government is doing too much, according to Bob McDonnell. What would be your ideas in terms of job creation for this country moving ahead now? Did the president say enough last night?
Well, I was happy to see him pivot to jobs and the economy, but I think we're going to have to do a lot more. We face the same challenges in California that we're going to have to, I think, do some targeted tax reduction to get hiring going. We're going to have to streamline regulation. Regulation, in many ways, I think, is strangling businesses more than taxes. And frankly, we're going to have to stand up and compete for those jobs. So I was happy to see him pivot, but I don't think he went far enough.
Meg, you're down 5 points in the latest poll, only 5 points. You're the leading Republican, down 5 to Jerry Brown. A lot of people asking the question of the so-called ungovernable state. Who would want that job? So why do you want it, and what are you going to do to change things there?
I want it because I just refuse to believe California cannot be better than it is. I refuse to let the state fail. And it matters to every American because where goes California potentially goes the entire country. In many ways, we are a precursor to what could happen to the country. And what I want to do is I am a big believer in focus. And referencing the President's State of the Union address, I think leaders have to focus. In times of crisis, you cannot boil the ocean. So I want to focus on 3 things in California: creating and keeping jobs, cutting government spending, not slowing the rate of growth, but cutting government spending. And then we've got to address ourselves to the kindergarten through 12th grade education problem. In California, we're about 48th out of 50 states in terms of the quality of our K through 12 education system.
I like that. You can't boil the ocean. That's pretty good. But you live in a state by the ocean, a state that historically, at least since Howard Jarvis 25 years ago, has been governed more or less by referendum. Now, at eBay or any other large company, how long would a company last if you said to the employees, we're going to have a referendum on how this thing goes? How do you run a state?
Yeah. I mean, the referendum process, dates back to 1918, I think. And it has its useful purpose, but there's no question we have had too many referendums on the ballot and too much spending has been, propositioned into process. So I think you got to have a different approach, no question about it.
Meg, there were reports during the McCain campaign that you were appalled by Sarah Palin, the selection of Sarah Palin. I'm interested in your view of Sarah Palin, but particularly because California was the ground zero, Barry Goldwater, the radical right, of what we now call the Tea Party movement.
Yeah. Well, you probably know that my first person I worked for the presidential campaign was Mitt Romney. So I actually thought John McCain should pick Mitt Romney because he knew a lot about the economy, and so I thought the combination of foreign policy expertise and domestic economic expertise would have been the right combination. The Tea Party movement, I think, has lots of strength in California. There's a very, conservative element in California. And but I think what's interesting is in these economic times, what has happened is everyone has coalesced around jobs, jobs, jobs. If we don't put people back to work in California, I promise you there is no way out of this mess, because the only way to sustainably increase revenues is to put more people back to work and have more companies in California. And Mike, you're right. We have a business unfriendly state in California. I think we were rated 48th out of 50 states in terms of business climate. You know more. If it's not a good place to start and grow a business, then we have huge problems on our hands.
So if you were elected governor, what's the first thing you're going to address in terms of changing that, given the fact that you have huge fiscal problems and huge, at this point, unbridgeable gaps between revenue and expenses?
Right. So the first thing I would do is put a moratorium on all new regulations, and I would streamline the regulations we have. We can